On a scorching afternoon, on the 9th of November, in the year 2000, the quiet town of Nawgu, in Anambra State, Nigeria, became the stage for one of the most chilling and unforgettable scenes in the nation's history. The air was thick with tension, and whispers of fear and anticipation filled the streets. Men, women, and children gathered in trembling silence as the dreaded Bakassi boys, the notorious vigilante group famed for their brutal justice, arrived in town, their machetes glinting under the sun, charms dangling from their necks, and drums of vengeance echoing in their wake. Their mission was clear: to capture and execute the man the entire region feared yet revered, Prophet Eddy Nawgu, the self-proclaimed man of God, whose name had become synonymous with mystery, power, and terror. For years, Prophet Eddy had walked the land untouchable, performing supposed miracles by day and, as rumors had it, committing unspeakable acts by night. He was accused of dark rituals, human sacrifices, and making pacts with forces beyond comprehension. The police had failed to stop him. Even government officials dared not question his power. But on that fateful day, the Bakassi boys came not to question, but to judge. They dragged the prophet from his heavily guarded compound, his white robe torn, his charm-laden hands trembling for the first time. The man who once boasted that no mortal could harm him now stood face to face with his executioners, men who believed they were instruments of divine retribution. What followed was swift, savage, and final. The prophet who claimed to control life and death was burned before the very people he once mesmerized. That day, Nawgu witnessed the fall of a god and the rise of a new kind of justice, one forged not in courts or churches, but in blood and fire. Brace up for this one, because this video will make you question everyone who parades themselves as men of God. This is a story of greed, wickedness, and sheer evil. This is the story of Prophet Eddy Nawgu and how the Bakassi boys put an end to all his atrocities. In the heart of Anambra State, southeastern Nigeria, during the 1990s, a man emerged who would become one of the most feared and controversial figures in the region's history. His name was Eddy Nawgu, but to his followers, he was known simply as Prophet Eddy Nawgu, a self-styled man of God whose name struck both awe and terror across the land. To the faithful, he was a miracle worker, a prophet anointed by divine power. To his enemies and the many who whispered in fear, he was a dark sorcerer, a man who mixed the sacred with the profane and built his empire on lies, blood, and fear. His rise and fall would eventually lead to one of the most shocking acts of vigilante justice in Nigeria's history, when the dreaded Bakassi boys descended upon his town in the year 2000 and ended his reign in flames. Prophet Eddy Nawgu was born in Nawgu, a quiet town in Dunukofia local government area of Anambra State. Little is recorded about his early life, but by the late 1980s, he had begun presenting himself as a preacher and healer, claiming that God had chosen him as a vessel to save his people from poverty, sickness, and spiritual oppression. Eddy's early life remains shrouded in secrecy. He was described by those who knew him as an intelligent and ambitious young man. He reportedly showed a keen interest in spirituality from an early age, often spending hours alone in the bush, praying, fasting, and reading religious texts. In the deeply religious Igbo society of southeastern Nigeria, men who displayed unusual spiritual tendencies were easily revered. Eddy quickly learned that spirituality could command influence, and influence could command wealth. By his mid-20s, he began styling himself as a prophet and man of God, claiming to receive divine revelations and supernatural visions. Around the late 1980s, he established a ministry he called the Anyoma Healing Ministry, located right in his hometown of Nawgu. The compound grew rapidly into a sprawling spiritual center, part church, part shrine, part mystery. Every week, hundreds of people came to seek his help. His followers came from all walks of life: barren women hoping for children, businessmen seeking prosperity, politicians seeking spiritual protection, and the sick seeking miraculous healing. Eddy was charismatic, confident, and eloquent. He spoke with authority, quoted the Bible fluently, and performed elaborate prayers filled with dramatics. Many believed him to be divinely chosen, an anointed man sent to heal the land. But beneath this shining image of holiness, a darker reality began to form. As his congregation and wealth grew, so too did whispers of fear. People began to notice strange occurrences around his ministry. At night, eerie lights glowed from his compound, accompanied by drums and chanting. Those who lived near his church reported hearing cries and screams that faded into the darkness. Rumors circulated that Eddy practiced a secret form of witchcraft and ritualism, using human blood and body parts for power. His ministry, once known for prayers and healing, became associated with disappearances and death. It was said that Eddy maintained two faces, the public face of a prophet and a hidden one of an occult master. During the day, he performed miracles, making the blind see, healing the crippled, and revealing secrets about people's lives. But at night, he was believed to perform rituals that involved blood sacrifices. People spoke of his sacred room, a hidden chamber within his compound that no one except him was allowed to enter. Those who worked close to him, his assistants, guards, and maidens, were sworn to secrecy. Some of them would later vanish without trace, their families too afraid to ask questions. Eddy also developed a reputation for supernatural powers. He claimed he could transform into animals, walk through walls, or disappear into thin air. Many believed him. He allegedly demonstrated his powers during sermons, performing strange feats that defied logic. These performances, combined with the testimonies of those who claimed to be healed, deepened the people's faith in him. Yet, others whispered that his power was not from God, but from dark spirits. It was widely rumored that he had made a pact with a marine deity or spirit from the river, exchanging human lives for supernatural strength. His influence extended beyond religion. By the mid-1990s, Eddy Nawgu had become one of the most powerful men in Anambra State. He associated with wealthy businessmen, traditional rulers, and politicians, many of whom came secretly for spiritual fortification and protection. He provided charms and rituals to make people untouchable in business or politics. He also allegedly supplied protection charms for armed robbers who paid him with cash, vehicles, and stolen goods. In return, he blessed their weapons and promised them invisibility against police bullets. These criminals came to revere him, calling him Na'anyi, our father. Meanwhile, his wealth grew beyond imagination. He owned several cars, built a mansion that towered over the simple homes of his neighbors, and dressed in expensive flowing white robes. Inside his compound, he was always surrounded by beautiful young women. Some said they were maidens dedicated to prayer. Others claimed they were victims of his desires and rituals. Many of these girls, often between 16 and 25 years old, came from poor homes seeking deliverance or spiritual work. Some reportedly disappeared after entering his compound. When their families came asking, they were threatened or told that the girls had traveled for spiritual training. In time, even the police came under his control. It was said that officers who tried to arrest or question him were struck by mysterious illnesses or accidents. Fear of supernatural revenge made everyone stay away. His name alone was enough to silence opposition. In the markets, people avoided mentioning his name loudly. Those who dared to accuse him publicly were cursed. Stories circulated of men who mocked him suddenly dying in their sleep or losing their minds. Whether coincidence or manipulation, it strengthened the myth around him. By the late 1990s, Eddy's empire was running like a small kingdom. He reportedly had personal guards, spiritual assistants, and informants across nearby towns like Ukpo, Ifitedunu, and Umunachi. His compound became a fortress, decorated with crosses and Bible verses on the outside, but, according to many, filled with skulls, bones, and charms on the inside. People claimed that human heads were buried at the four corners of his house for protection. Inside his private shrine, there were said to be calabashes filled with blood, mirrors for seeing visions, and carved idols hidden beneath Christian symbols. Despite the growing suspicions, many still worshipped him. The fear of his power kept people obedient. He often declared himself a god among men, boasting that no weapon or human could harm him. His sermons turned increasingly arrogant. He began referring to himself as Eddy Jehovah, implying that he was more than a prophet, perhaps even divine. He demanded gifts and sacrifices from his followers, promising blessings in return. Some families sold their lands and properties to donate to his ministry. Others offered livestock, jewelry, or money. Those who failed to give were threatened with curses. The stories of his cruelty became more horrifying over time. Survivors claimed he performed human rituals, dismembering victims and using their parts for spiritual fortification. Some said he kept skulls in jars, soaked in blood, and chanted over them for power. He allegedly buried pregnant women alive as sacrifices to renew his strength every year. The truth behind these stories remains debated, but their consistency across testimonies suggested that something sinister was indeed happening within those walls. By the end of the 1990s, the once adored prophet had become a man shrouded in terror. Even his closest aides began fleeing. The same community that once worshipped him now whispered of his downfall. People reported seeing ghosts near his compound, hearing wailing voices at night, and finding blood-soaked clothes in nearby bushes. His arrogance grew in proportion to the fear surrounding him. He believed himself untouchable, claiming divine immunity from punishment. Yet, even as dread and suspicion engulfed the land, no one dared to confront him. The police would not act, the villagers would not speak, and the victims' families mourned in silence. Eddy Nawgu ruled from his compound like a dark priest king, commanding both reverence and fear. His name was both a prayer and a curse, uttered in worship by some, whispered in horror by others. He had become the perfect symbol of a society where faith, fear, and power had become entangled. And so, in the final years of the 20th century, Prophet Eddy Nawgu stood at the height of his reign, a man who began as a preacher but became a predator, using religion as his shield and human fear as his weapon. His atrocities, veiled behind the facade of holiness, spread silently through the towns of Anambra. But though he appeared untouchable, the weight of his evil was drawing the attention of forces beyond his control. His empire was about to meet its reckoning, and the man who claimed to be God would soon learn that even gods can bleed. Unfortunately for Prophet Eddy, his doomsday came when the Bakassi boys emerged and decided to put a permanent end to all his atrocities. The Bakassi boys emerged in the late 1990s as one of the most feared and respected vigilante groups in southeastern Nigeria, particularly in Anambra and Abia states. Their rise was born out of desperation, a response to the lawlessness, violent crime, and political corruption that had gripped the region. In cities like Onitsha, crime was rampant. Armed robbers, ritualists, and corrupt policemen terrorized citizens with impunity. With government security forces failing to protect lives, the people of the southeast turned to self-help. Out of that anger and helplessness, the Bakassi boys were born. They began in Abia State, as a small group of traders who took it upon themselves to fight back against criminals terrorizing the local markets. Named after the Bakassi line, a row of shops in the Ariaria market, they gained a reputation for ruthlessly hunting down thieves, ritual killers, and anyone who engaged in occultic or diabolical practices. Their methods were both mystical and brutal. The Bakassi boys believed they possessed supernatural powers, using charms, amulets, and rituals to detect lies or evil spirits. They claimed to see into a person's heart, to know who was guilty or innocent without interrogation. Once a person was found guilty, execution was swift, often carried out publicly with machetes or fire, meant to serve as a warning to others. By 1999, the influence of the Bakassi boys had spread beyond Abia into Anambra State, where people pleaded for their help. It was during this expansion that they turned their attention to a figure whose name had become synonymous with terror. Prophet Eddy Nawgu, popularly known as Eddy Nawgu. Despite presenting himself as a man of God, rumors about Eddy's dark deeds were widespread. Human sacrifices, disappearances, and occult rituals allegedly carried out in his so-called Temple of the Holy Spirit in Nawgu. The Bakassi boys received numerous petitions and testimonies from families whose loved ones vanished after visiting the prophet. Acting on the cries of the people, the Bakassi boys launched an investigation. They reportedly carried out spiritual consultations and gathered witnesses before setting out to arrest Eddy Nawgu in late 2000. When they finally arrived at his compound in Nawgu, what they found shocked them. According to accounts, they discovered human skulls, charms, and ritual objects buried around his shrine. Prophet Eddy attempted to resist arrest through both physical and spiritual means. It is said he tried to use incantations to disappear, but the Bakassi boys, fortified with their own charms, overpowered him. Eddy Nawgu was taken into custody and paraded before the public. Witnesses claimed that people who had accused him of killing relatives confronted him directly, demanding justice. Despite his pleas of innocence, the Bakassi boys subjected him to their spiritual tests, and he allegedly failed them all. For the Bakassi boys, that was proof of guilt. They did not hand him over to the police, whom they believed were too corrupt to deliver justice. Instead, they executed him in what would become one of the most talked about events in southeastern Nigeria. His death marked a symbolic victory for the Bakassi boys, the fall of a man many feared untouchable. Crowds celebrated, and people from neighboring communities came to see the body of the once powerful prophet. The killing of Eddy Nawgu solidified the Bakassi boys' reputation as supernatural enforcers of justice, both feared and revered. For a time, crime dropped drastically wherever they operated. However, their extreme methods, including torture and summary executions, later drew condemnation from human rights groups and the Nigerian government. Still, in the eyes of many, it was the Bakassi boys who finally put an end to the reign of terror of Prophet Eddy Nawgu, a man who had risen as a self-proclaimed prophet but fell as one of Nigeria's most notorious figures. Thanks for watching, and see you on our next one.